Hello and welcome to another great episode of Dojo Live this Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. My name is Kim Lantis and it's, as always, my pleasure to be hosting today. Joining me as co-host is Sridhar Padmanabhan. Hey Sridhar.
Hey Kim.
Good to see you again.
Great to be here.
All right. And of course, the guest of honor, the most important person of today's show is Omri Shalev. He's the co-founder and CTO of Reeco. Omri, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, it's going to be a pleasure to get to know your story, to get to know more about Reeco, and of course, learn about AI and back-of-house operations for hotels. But before we dive into bringing AI to the hotel operation, we'd like to get to know you a bit better, get to know your story, your passion, and what sort of led up to co-founding Reeco.
Yeah, so happy to be here. As I said, my name is Omri, and my journey started when I was 15, actually. I moved from Israel to Mexico City, and this was the first time I was introduced to engineering and coding, and I just fell in love. For me, it was love at first sight. And since then, I came back to Israel, and I jumped between different startups. And as you know, Israel is a very kind of a tech hub with lots of great technology. So I've been moving between smaller startups to some bigger startups like Samsung and Microsoft, if you can call them startups. But this was the first time I was introduced to some very kind of high level, crazy companies like Microsoft, where I was part of a team of Azure Marketplace. And in this world, I could see billions of dollars moving from one side of the world to the other. And with my partner, Henrik, I actually took all the coding skills I had and with his knowledge in hospitality, and we founded together Reeco, which we're working on in the last 4 years.
I love that. I love that story. And yay, Mexico, where what has become my home. I love that. So let's talk a bit about Reeco and the problem it is that you help solve, or why you exist for the hospitality industry.
So I'm not sure everyone knows, but hospitality, specifically hotels, they're not very technological, to say the least, when it comes to the operations and back of the house for many reasons. That we will try to tackle today a little bit. But when we are talking about the back of the house, and specifically where Reeco solves the challenges, we're talking about purchasing. Some people don't know, but there are some chefs who still place orders with pen and paper, or they manage their inventory with that. They call sales rep. They use technologies like punch outs that was, fun fact, was introduced in 1999, and it's still the leading technology in the back of the house. So Reeco is trying to take this challenge of purchasing, which for us in our home, we solve it pretty quickly with Uber Eats and Instacart and Amazon and Costco. And we just do it with our app without doing anything. With hotels, they buy for $100,000 per month, and they're still doing it with pen and paper. So the focus is to help them with purchasing, receiving, inventory management, recipe management, accounts payable, and bring everything in one platform so they can utilize AI properly and save lots of time and eventually money and become more efficient.
I love that. You know, as we lean into this conversation of how the hospitality industry can use the latest trends in AI for their back of house operations, before we get into those specifics, I do have this question. My observation here on dojolive, as we speak to many leaders and just, what I read and the what seems to be the topics of industry related conferences is very front of house focused right now. It's all about personalization. It's about the guest experience, which is amazing, right? And we want to distinguish ourselves from the competition. But it seems to me in some ways, like you mentioned, the back of house kind of gets the back burner. And why do you suppose that is? And what do you see, or how do you see, or is my read on that wrong? Or why should that change? Why should the hospitality industry be focusing on the back of house maybe just as much as the front?
So I think that from the front of the house, you get the revenue. But from the back of the house, this is where the revenue kind of leaks out. Because if you are not taking care of how to do the processes in an efficient way, just for you to know, for example, in the kitchen, most of the day-to-day decisions of what to order, this is one of the biggest spending in every property. Food and beverage, cleaning supplies, engineering stuff, all those kind of things. If you're not in control and you make sure that you do that efficiently, the revenue from the front of the house is not going to stay. So it's very important to put a very strong light on those dark rooms and kind of find all those inefficiencies and block the revenue leakage. Otherwise, what's the point of spending so much money on marketing and nice guest experience if you're not making enough money afterwards? And we'll probably talk a little bit why the situation is like this and what happens. But the back of the house is probably the most important component every owner and general manager need to focus on in 2024.
For sure. And definitely, Lisa, a major source of stress and probably for employee dissatisfaction, I suppose, which, as far as I understand, is also very relevant to the industry right now in terms of just the labor market and tenure and other elements. So let's dive into these latest trends. What are the latest trends in AI that you'd like to spotlight here?
So I think before I jump into the trends themselves, I think it's very important for hoteliers because they see all over AI is the new thing, ChatGPT 4.0, and you have crazy things going on in other industries. And it's not that the general managers or the chefs are not tech forward. They're young people in many places, and they already use in their house AI. Some of them even use ChatGPT, but in their day-to-day, they don't know how to make a decision or how do you even implement AI in your property. This is probably the most crucial question, because what's AI? It sounds like a buzzword everyone is using nowadays, like AI, you need to throw AI over there and it will fix it. You need to put AI in the electricity and it will work. No one knows what's AI, but if you try to visualize that, AI is basically a computer that you put data inside and you get a solution. Now, it sounds very simple, but when you are purchasing with pen and paper, well, all the data is not in a digital format. So the way for you to start embracing technology starts by you streamlining some of the processes and bringing all the information in one centralized place. And I think this is, if we're talking about trends, before we start thinking about crazy things like the thing we do at Reeco, like forecasting your inventory and forecasting a card that you're gonna order today, and in a few clicks just get that. Geocode all your invoices in few clicks. Before we get to the cool stuff, we need to make sure that we call it in engineering, you lift and shift. You lift the existing pen and paper, all the manual processes, and you bring it into a more technological space. And with the data that you get there, then you're able to manipulate and do amazing stuff that can save you time, money, and also, as you mentioned, make your employees happier. Because if I order from my phone on Instacart and then I come back to work and I need to call the sales rep, and it's very tedious and annoying, and we know that the turnover for line employees is so high, then we need to focus on the cultural, the technology, in order for us to make sure our employees are in a good spot and they're happy.
I absolutely love that. Sridhar, what are you taking away from some of this, or what would you like to know from Omri?
Yeah, so I think the company looks very exciting. Omri, one of my questions was that are you more suited to a restaurant space or a hospitality hotel space? One question that I had, because I think I've seen some tech platforms that try to address this in the restaurant space, but a lot of your customers seem to be in the hotel space. So I just wanted to have your thought on, what is your target segment? Is it both? Is it one kind of a thing?
It's a good question. What makes you different?
So it's a little bit of a background. My partner is hotelier all his life. His grandfather built a chain in Israel 45 years ago. and basically went through every single department possible. I have pictures of him cleaning rooms. So I know his grandfather was a tough guy. So I know that he learned everything from the bottom up. And this is why we started initially with hotels. And when we got to Miami and Florida for the first time, and we started to kind of pitch our idea and work with hotels, we figure out that the problem is the same for restaurant, hotels, country clubs, golf clubs, everyone who does some sort of, let's say, industrial or enterprise purchases, unlike me and you. So our focus is hotels, but the problem exists in every other area. And I think the biggest difference between Reeco to any platforms out there is the way that you do the purchasing with us. So in most platforms, what you do is you pick a supplier that you work with, you will go to their website. This is what we call punch outs. You are being punched out to their website, or you see a list of the products on the supplier's page. You fill your card and you check out. With Reeco, we wanted to do it the other way around. You first pick the products and then you pick the supplier. Now, this is very complicated because if one supplier calls it a nice apple and the other one calls it a lovely apple and the third one calls it a wonderful apple, how can you make apple to apple comparison in real time? This is, by the way, why there is so many inefficiencies in this space, because you cannot do it as human being. Even for a computer, we had approximation algorithms just to find out who is the most optimal checkout for you that day, because price fluctuates. So with Reeco, with heavy AI and processing behind the scenes, we managed to build one big unified catalog based on lots of parameters. And the purchasing is completely different. And the purchasing is the engine for all the other modules, for recipe, for inventory, for receiving, for accounts payable. Once you have the purchasing done properly, and we invested about 2 years of our company just making sure that we fine-tune the purchasing, because it's very complicated. One supplier gives you the items from his warehouse, but he has separate deliveries of items that comes from a different warehouse, and price fluctuates, and they're not very technological. They don't even know what's API. They have EDI. Some of them send PDF files. So lots of things that are going on, but we are focused, as I started with, let's first get all the data in one place and then do amazing stuff with it.
So this is the lift and shift that you were speaking about earlier, but Reeco already has done the lifting and the shifting. And so it's really, I imagine the onboarding for your clients is quite simple. It's just, this is what I want. And Reeco says, there you go.
Exactly. So I think this is also another big difference. Other companies, they offer onboarding 1 year, 1 year and a half, because they need to process all the data manually. With Reeco, because we have this catalog, you don't need to put any products manually. You upload 90 days of invoices. We have our ways to match up between the invoice itself, even if it's a picture of the invoice. We match it up with our catalog, and in 10 minutes, we create a store for you. The onboarding in total, with training, with the offline setup, takes less than 7 days on our side. So this is incredible. And this is where you bring SaaS component into this industry, because if you're asking yourself why the back of the house is so old school, is because, first of all, they are scarred by other software. Second of all, the onboarding process were too long and the people just hated it. And with Reeco, it's month to month, like Netflix. You don't like us, we're out. Like we got in, we go out. So it's easy for you to try it out. Let's say as a management company with 100 properties, you test 3-4 properties, you see how they react. And if everything is good, you can easily enroll with all your properties. So it made things much easier.
Wow. You mentioned recipe management. So, and flipping this on its head, I, as the user, just get to decide I need Fiji apples. And then I'm automatically going to be supported with the best price. Perhaps it's quality, perhaps it's what can get here fastest, I'm assuming different variables. But what happens if no one has Fiji apples? Is there a way for you to tell me what a good substitute might be, or if it's no longer season? What does this recipe management component look like?
Yeah, so this is a great question and super precise, because with recipes, basically before Reeco, it's mainly done with Excels or some archaic software where the data is not flowing inside, meaning that price don't really change. You don't know what's your supplier's inventory status. And with Reeco, we are connecting your recipes into two main pillars or data sources. One is POS systems, and the other one is our purchasing. So I can know in real time exactly what are your net sales and what are your purchasing. So I can give you, first of all, the old of this industry, which is real-time food cost. This is something no one else is doing. But more importantly, to your point, I wish I could share my screen and show you a quick demo, but basically
You
what
can
you
if you'd
do,
like.
I'm
We
sure
can. There
prepare
is
me
the
for
percent option.
next time. I'll promise to do a demo. But basically, the idea with our recipe is that, let's say you want to create a Caesar salad. So you put lettuce and you put your sub recipe of your dressing, and then for the lettuce, you're fine getting it from one supplier, but also from the other supplier because you like the quality of both of them. In just 2 clicks, you select I want this and this. Whenever this one is out of stock and you order from the other supplier, it will take it from the other supplier and add it to the average price paid just because you are doing the purchasing with us. So you can put as many alternatives you want for your recipe, and the price or the cost of the recipe will change only whenever you do the actual purchase. So this is how everything starts to connect together, and why I started at the beginning saying that you need to bring all your data in one place. And we have customers that at the beginning they wanted to try only the purchasing because every modules of ours is a standalone. You can onboard only that, because if you're a full service, you might not need, sorry, if you're a select service, you might not need all the modules. So they tried something. I was like, well, you know what? I'm not seeing savings. I'm not seeing the ROI, but it's a process. And this is the education and why I go on podcasts like this to educate hoteliers that the process is, first of all, to bring the data in one single place, and then the magic starts automatically for you. But you need to kind of teach the people how to start. And this is, I think, the most important component for this discussion. How can you, not what are the latest trends, but how can you actually practically bring AI to your business?
I love that. What about in terms of the usability? You know, you mentioned this being a process and getting your users to sort of, let's say, fall in love with the first module to move on to other modules. What's the process for you as a CTO to kind of determine what's working well on your product?
Yeah, so I think in every SaaS software, you look at the engagement, you see if they like it or not, you ask them for feedback. It's very important for us not to live in our ivory tower and just think everything is working fine and kind of neglect the needs of our users. So we frequently do interviews with our users. We ask them, we have software that can really track their sessions and see, for example, with our invoices, one of the cool stuff that we do is that instead of you GL coding manually, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the process, but basically GL coding means that you take an invoice and usually with a ruler and a marker, you go one by one and you start to sum up the numbers. So you know that bleach goes to one budget or one GL code, and the whatever Apple goes to the other GL code. So with Reeco, you just push hundreds of invoices into one place and we code them for you based on your previous coding patterns. So one of the things that we do is that if we see, for example, a user that is stuck in the same page for more than 5 minutes, we get an alert. And then that product team go and sits and watch the session so we can come up with a better solution. And the best features or the best things that we've managed to secure was looking at customers or user using the system and seeing, for example, one thing that we added was all of a sudden they disappear and they came up with a number. Instead of 5, it was 57.2. And we asked ourselves, how do they know how to do that? And apparently what they did is they went to a calculator on the side of their table. They did the calculation and they came back to the platform. So instead of doing that, in every field, you can use it as a calculator in our app. So you can have plus, add 57.2, and it will do the calculation for you. So you don't even need to go outside the platform to your real world, do the calculation and come back. So those are the kind of things that we do to check engagement and see if the user like it or not.
Wonderful. Shadar, What's your take on any of this? I know that you yourself have quite a bit of an experience in the hospitality industry.
Right. I think, thanks, Kim. I think couple of questions, right? I think I was thinking about how some large restaurant or beverage suppliers like US Foods and Cisco, how they might react to your platform because they like to say, hey, buy only from us, for example, and things like that, right? Whereas somebody like you might provide alternatives. For example, if, I mean, obviously you're building your supplier base from the 90-day invoice. And then on the other side, the hotels, accounts closing ERP, and they say, hey, are you going to help with that? Is your platform going to help with that? Because we need to close out, do our monthly closing the books and things like that. So just wondering about these two parts, Omri, the suppliers on one side and closing the books on the other.
Yeah. So
Boring questions, but
in any marketplace, it's very important that you take care of both of your customers. The supplier is my customer and the hotel is my customer. I cannot just avoid the supplier and say, it is what it is, you'll need to live with this. One of our important lessons here is the fact that I'm not putting the suppliers in a lion cage and make them fight with each other. This is why we're doing lift and shift. We're taking your own existing suppliers, the contracts that you have. So let's say in this industry, you have GPOs also that are part of the contract. So what we do is that we connect with the contracts that you have. So essentially you could have two properties in the same street, and when they log into Reeco, they both see different prices based on the contracts, based on the delivery days, cutoff times that they agreed with the suppliers. I'm not in the markups game. I'm not here to raise prices. I don't care if you pay $10 or $12 for your steak. I'm here as a software to make sure that I streamline everything. Now, when it comes to suppliers like Cisco and US Foods, you have their sales rep. Sales rep are hardworking people that really, really try to make sure that their hotels are happy. And when they need to manage 50 properties, it becomes very cumbersome, because if the chef is missing apples, he's going to get an angry call right now saying, where are my apples? I need it for tomorrow. But with Reeco, we have our customer success team 24/7, that if the chef is having problem during the receiving, he can say, I'm missing an item. We get an alert. And like Uber Eats, for example, where you don't reach out to the restaurant, but they do that for you, we do the exact same thing. So we start to build relationship with the sales rep, and we start to share with them some information saying, hey, listen, I think that you're not getting enough order, not because your prices are not good, but because of the delivery days for this property. The chef likes to order on Wednesday and not on Friday because it's his day off. So let me teach you how can you become more profitable and have better revenue through some of the information that I have, because it's very important. But at the same time, I need to be, and it's probably the most important thing in any marketplace, to keep the credibility and trust, because I'm not here to manipulate. I'm here to give service. And I hope you answered the question, but there is a lot to do here. So we need to respect the player. We're not moving the cheese to anyone. We just want both sides to communicate better.
I think you've thought about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I'm hearing about Reeco is this idea of this interoperability, not only in the hotel operation, with your finance teams and the purchasing teams, the creation of the food, with chefs and whoever else, but then just like the helping create this very cool community between supplier, hotel, with you. I think just making the industry better all around, and I think that's really beautiful. On that note, what might you say in your final few minutes with us here on the show? Any sort of words of wisdom or lessons learned throughout this entire journey, working in the hospitality industry, creating a SaaS product? What might you share of some do's and don'ts, perhaps, from your experience?
Patience. I think this is an industry that requires a lot of patience, and the people are amazing. They want to change, even though it doesn't seem like it, but they it's time. It's time for us to see those changes. In 2024, people cannot order with pen and paper. They cannot manage inventory with pen and paper. This is not doable anymore. And you need technology, and the people are thirsty for that. And I think that the hospitality in general, it's such a wonderful industry. It's a crucible, a melting pot for so many cultures. I get to meet so many chefs and housekeeping managers from different countries, different languages. And basically, if you see it as a longer or a more futuristic mission, is to create this sort of community, both with the hotel internally and with the suppliers, and try to connect those two communities together and make this purchasing, receiving, and all that much more fun.
Thank you. I love that. How does that spill over into the company culture that you and your founder are creating at Reeco?
Well, culture, I think, it's a great topic. I can talk about that for hours. I would actually share something that I had a discussion with my product manager, and I just texted her, hey, can we jump on a quick call to catch up? Because I was doing so many things. And even though we built together the roadmap, sometimes you have features and customers and sales and marketing. As part of my job, I do lots of things other than the fun stuff. So I was sitting with her, and she told me, hey, you look super tired. It seems like you've been working very hard. Let me just sit for 30 minutes, explain you exactly where we stand. And I really suggest that you will just delegate some of the workload you have to us. And I was not surprised, but I was very happy. And I think beneath all of that, there is one word, which is challenge. And I had a conversation with my leading designer, and she taught me something. And it's beautiful that you can learn something from every person in the company, regardless of the title. I don't care if you have C in your title, it doesn't mean anything. And she would tell me, I asked her in our one-on-one call, are you happy? What can I do to make sure that you're happy, that you get whatever you need? And she told me, for employees, it's like we live in a triangle. In that triangle, we have three things. Salary, which is obviously important. I don't want to feel like I'm underpaid. You have people, and this is regarding to the culture. You need to make sure that it's fun for you to come to work. And the third one is challenge. And I think that those combination, if you make sure that you create enough challenge, you delegate to the people, you give them more to do, and not just hire more and more people just for you to say, that's how we're going to move faster. No, give them more responsibility, make them feel more meaningful. And I think this is what Reeco is all about. It's not about micromanaging people. It's about taking a challenge like disrupting this hospitality world and giving it to the people around us. And I rest assured they're much smarter than me. They bring amazing ideas to the table. And this is, I think, the foundation of our culture. More responsibility, do more things, and feel challenged.
I love that. And I think as one tip or point of the triangle stretches, then the other two have to stretch, right, to compensate.
Yes.
What a beautiful analogy. As we wrap up today, Omri, it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, getting to learn more about Reeco and your impact on the hospitality industry, particularly the back of house. Sridhar, did you have one final question that you'd like to finish with?
No, I'm thinking of all the possible ways in which Reeco can scale to adjacent industries, and 30 minutes. I wish I had another 30 minutes with Omri.
Well, we
It's
can make
exciting.
that happen. You're welcome back on the show
Yeah.
anytime, of course. It was again our pleasure. Stick around for just a moment as we go off air. But before we do, I would like to remind the audience that we do have a show coming up next week. It's going to be the fourth installment of our Hospitality Advantage Real Stories of AI in Action. That's a collaboration with Provision Partners and David Chesler. And next week, we're going to be speaking with Manuel Cubillo on all about cloud. He is the VP of Cloud Engineering at Ancora. So join us next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for that as well. Omri, we wish you and Reeco nothing but success as you continue to just be an impact and an innovation in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you so much.